Hello, welcome to Irish Story Time. My name is Jo, and today I want to read to you from Over Nine Waves, a book of Irish legends by Marie Heaney. This is her retelling of the Enchanted Deer, the Birth of Oisín. One fine day, as the Fianna were returning home after a day's hunting, a beautiful deer started up in front of them and began to run as fast as the wind towards the fort of Alma. The doe ran with such speed that she outstripped most of the hunting party. The men and their dogs fell back exhausted, and in the end only Finn and his two hounds, Bron and Scullin, were still in pursuit. As they swept along the side of a valley, the deer stopped suddenly in full flight and lay down on the smooth grass. Finn was surprised at this strange behavior. Bron and Scullin ran ahead of him, and when Finn came close to the beautiful doe, he was even more amazed to see his two best hunting dogs frolicking around her. Instead of wounding and killing her, they were licking her face and neck and patting her limbs. Finn knew by this that he should not harm the animal, so he called his dogs to heel, and they set off for Alma. When he looked back, he saw that the doe was on their heels following them home. When they reached the White Fort, Finn, his hounds, and their strange companion went in, and the deer was given safe quarters for the night. After the evening meal, Finn retired to his room. As he lay down, a lovely woman walked into his room. She was dressed in clothes of the finest material, richly ornamented. Finn stared at her in surprise and admiration, and then the woman spoke. "I am the fawn that you and your hounds spared this evening and brought back safely to Alma. I am called Save. A druid of the Tuatha De Danann, the dark druid, changed me into a deer because I refused his love. For 3 years now, I have endured the hardship and danger of a wild deer's life in a part of Ireland far, far from here. In the end, one of the druid's servants took pity on me and told me that if I could get inside a Fianna fortress, the druid's power over me would come to an end, and I would become a woman again. All day have I run through the woods of Ireland without stopping until I came here, near the hill of Allen. I came into your territory, Finn, for I knew that you were the leader of the Fianna. I outran your hunting party until Bron and Scullin were the only pursuers on my track, for I knew they wouldn't kill me. They recognized my true nature, which was like their own. Finn fell so deeply in love with the beautiful woman that he would not leave her side. For months he was so enchanted by her that he abandoned all his former activities and was not seen at any hunt, fight, or feast. Instead, he stayed at the side of his beloved Save, and he called her the Flower of Alma. But word came to Alma from Cormac MacArt that the Lachlan invaders had sailed across the cold North Sea and were in Dublin Bay. The Fianna were under oath to defend the country from invasion, so, reluctant as he was to go, Finn had to leave Alma and beautiful Save. For 7 days, Finn was absent driving back the Lachlan. The moment the battle was over, he hurried back to Alma. As he ran over the plain towards his fort, his mind was full of Save. When Alma came into view, his eyes scoured the ramparts for his first glimpse of her. He knew that she would be out to welcome him home as soon as news of his approach reached her, but there was no sign of her. Instead of his wife, his servants came out to meet him. They cheered his safe return, but their faces were sad. "Where is my beautiful Save?" Finn called out anxiously. No one spoke, for no one wanted to be the first to break the bad news. "Where is my wife?" Finn asked them again, his face full of fear, and they had to tell him. "Don't blame us, Finn," they implored. "While you were fighting the fair-haired Lachlans, yourself and Bron and Scullin appeared here outside the fort. You put the Dord Fianna to your lips, and its humming music filled Alma, soothing us all. Save, your beautiful, gentle wife, heard the music, and she came running out of her room, thinking you had returned. She flew down through the pass and out of the gates. We tried to stop her, for by then we knew that it was not you that was blowing the Dord Fianna, but someone who had assumed your shape. Save would not listen to us. She ignored both of our entreaties and our commands. I must go to welcome my husband back. I must go to meet my Finn, she called out to us. He saved me, he protected me, and I'm carrying his child. We begged her to stay here, but she was so overjoyed at your safe return that none of us could stop her. She threw herself into the arms of the one who had taken on your shape. A second later, she realized her mistake. She gave a wild shriek and drew back, but the sorcerer struck her with a wand. Instantly, a beautiful frightened doe stood in her place. She stood trembling on the plain for a moment, looking back towards Alma. Then the druid's 2 hounds circled around her, barking wildly, and chased the terror-stricken deer out of the fort. 3 or 4 times she made desperate attempts to spring back into the fort, but each time the hound seized her by the throat and pulled her back. "Oh, Finn," they cried, seeing the grief and horror on his face, "we swear to you we tried our best to save her. Before you could count to 20, we had snatched our spears and swords and rushed out onto the plain to rescue her, but the plain was deserted. We could see nothing. No sign of a woman or deer, man or dog anywhere. But we could hear the beat of running feet drumming the hard plain and the howl of dogs. These noises filled the air all around us and confused us, for each of us heard the sound coming from a different direction." Finn threw his head back in anguish when he heard this and hammered his breast with his fists. He uttered not one word, but went alone to his quarters, and there he stayed all that day and all night and wasn't seen until dawn broke over the Liffey plain. For 7 years after that, unless he was leading the Fianna against the Lachlan raids, he was scouring the country, exploring the remotest corners of the land in search of his beloved Save. For 7 more years, he mourned the beautiful woman who had made him so happy through their time together. All that time his face was sad, and he was never seen to smile. Except in the heat of battle or the excitement of a chase, his spirits never lifted. When he went hunting, he left his main pack of dogs behind and took with him only Bron, Skolin, and 3 other hounds he trusted. He wanted to be sure that Save would be left unharmed if by good chance they ever found her. At the end of 14 years, he and his Fianna companions were hunting on the side of Ben Woolden in Sligo, where they had heard a huge clamor from the pack of hounds who had gone ahead of them into a narrow pass. They rushed to the place, and when they arrived there, they found Finn's 5 hounds forming a circle round a naked youth whose long hair reached almost to his feet. Finn's hounds were fighting furiously to hold back the rest of the pack as they tried to seize him. The youth stood calmly at the center of the circle, unconcerned by the turbulent dogfight that had surged around his feet. He stared curiously at the men of the Fianna as they hurried to rescue him. As soon as the other dogs had been called off, Bron and Skolin went up to the wild boy and whined at him, licking his face and limbs, and jumping up on him as if he, and not Finn, was their master. Finn and his companions went up to the handsome youth and touched his head gently and hugged him to show him he would not be harmed. They brought him with them to their hunting bothy and gave him food and drink. Then they gave him some clothes and cut his hair, and he began to be easy in their company and to forget his sudden wild ways. Finn, gazing at the youth, saw in his features a shadow of the lovely features of Save. He judged his age to be about 14, the number of years since Save had gone, and he felt confident that he was their child. When he returned to Alma, the boy came with him, and Finn loved him so much that he kept him at his side all the day long. He talked to him and told him stories, and the boy learned to speak. Bron and Skolin loved their new companion so much that they spent all their time frolicking around him waiting to be petted. When the boy learned to talk, he told Finn everything he could remember of his previous life. He had been looked after by a gentle doe, he said, who had protected him and sheltered him and whom he loved like a mother. They lived in a wild, lonely place, ranging together through valleys, over rocky slopes, drinking from the streams, hiding in the dark woods. During the summer, he had fed on berries and fruit, and in the winter, provisions were left for him in a sheltered cave. A dark-looking man visited them from time to time. He would speak to the doe, sometimes gently and persuasively, sometimes in a loud, threatening voice. But however he addressed her, the doe shrank away from him with terrified eyes, every limb trembling with fear. The man always left, in a great rage. Though the deer and the child were free to roam this mountain park, they couldn't leave it. It was surrounded by high peaks and sheer cliffs, so that there was no escape. One day, the dark druid arrived and cornered the doe. First, he spoke tenderly, coaxing her to come with him. Then he harangued her, threatening her in a loud, harsh voice. He kept up this treatment for a long time, but the doe still shrank away from him, shivering with fear. At last the dark druid took a hazel wand and struck her with it. She was powerless then to do anything but follow him. But as she was led away, she kept looking back at the boy, bleeding and calling out with heartbroken cries. The boy made desperate attempts to follow her, but he too was enchanted. He sobbed with fear and grief, but try as he might, he could not move a limb. He heard the deer's cries grow fainter and more desperate, and he was so overcome that he fainted and fell to the ground. When he woke up, the hilly region where the doe and he had lived so happily had gone, and though he searched for days for the high mountains and cliffs, he could not find them. He wandered alone in the new terrain until the hounds of the Fianna had picked up his scent, and Finn had taken him home. When Finn heard this story, he knew for certain that the youth was his son, and the son of his beloved Save, and he gave him the name Oisín, which means little deer. I'm a really big fan of Oisín, and he has a very tragic beginning, but later on in his life, he gets a gift from the fairy realm, and he gets to go to Tirnanog. And I'd really like to read that to you sometime, because Oisín didn't have a very easy life, but he was very blessed towards the end. Thank you for letting me read to you today.